diving right back into it. Just pulled the transmission off. We're gonna see what exactly on this clutch has failed. So far, it looks like some of the pads have broken off because it is stuck in the depressed, or I should say, the open position. Okay. That looks fine. And that looks fine. The hell? So it's glazed for sure. But I'm not seeing anything that shows that this shouldn't work. Everything released. I thought for sure some of these pads were going to be missing, but I'm thinking we just completely overpowered this thing. So I just popped this on here with the disc flipped around. And I remember why I didn't put it in this way, because it hits the center of the slave cylinder when you tighten it down all the way. But this is how it's intended to go in, I'm guessing, since now there's plenty of clearance here. We're gonna ditch this clutch. I mean, that shouldn't have anything to do with it slipping. It's not like it was sitting under a preload to slip. So we're gonna ditch this and put the other one on. So we are back to Clutchmaster. We never got rid of our 6-puck from before. The flywheel was damaged, if you recall from the video where we tore this engine down. This is their new version of the flywheel, same part number, but this is actually 4 pounds lighter than the previous version that we had on here, which would have been the original flywheel they used to sell. So the whole point of going to the cheapo one was to save weight. We're still saving weight. I'm going to this new one. So I gotta torque that down and then put the clutch on there. So we're back to doing this. It's really the only option right now. We never overpowered that clutch. So it should still be fine. We have spoken to Clutchmaster, and when the time comes, they do have a twin disc they can throw together for us, which we might get to that point sooner than we think, but we will see. For now, I'd really like to keep it single disc just because it's a lot easier to work with, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna get the clutch and the transmission all put back on here, and then this thing is ready to go into that car. All right, that's all back together. So now we'll move this out of the way and pull in the other car and get it plopped in there. So we got our engine bay more prepped in this thing. I still gotta take that bar off. But we got the other car's master cylinder on. When I took this car's master cylinder out, the fluid was like white and watery, so I'm really happy that I just had to swap that over. I took out the ABS module because I need to do a different brake line deal, but cleaned up some stuff. There was stuff everywhere. I got the other car's trans mount on here, got the heat shielding off. The HVAC stuff will come out when I do the inside of the car, so I'm not worried about that right now. So let's get this engine hanging in here, free up some space in here. Once the engine's hanging in here, I got to figure out intercooler and all of that stuff in this chassis before I even get to doing the interior stuff. I want to have the engine bay stuff all sorted, because one of the issues we ran into with the harness that I made is stuff ended up moving because it just didn't work where it was, or like you have this right here where it didn't fit great. So I want to get all of that sorted before I do all the wiring and everything. All right, the engine is in. I must say it's a little weird. Here's what I'm thinking for intercooler. Now, I am kind of limited where it can go. And I also don't want to buy a new one, because if I bought a new one and changed this position between these two areas, the intercooler would get really small, and this one's plenty sized right. So like if this was pointed this way, which is how they make this in other variations, it'd be right over here. So this kind of works out. So what I'll have to do is get the appropriate coupler that expands up to this, and have to weld on an extension pipe to that, which is no big deal. And then this will just turn and come around into the throttle, which is fine as far as brackets go. So we have mounting points here, here, and one right here. This one right here is the only one where it's like, okay, where do I mount it to? Because there's not really anything over there, but I can make a stainless steel bracket that comes from the engine up to that. And then on this side, I can make a bracket that comes off of like here, or even the manifold and runs up. So there's options for that. These can be flipped to face that way. That way those coolant lines can go through into the cab over there. I don't want anything going into the cabin on this side, just because there's no existing holes that would work for that, and I don't want to add any. So that can run through that way, or we have this, which will be a hole once the HVAC system's out. It can go in that way, and that can go to the tank. So I'm thinking this is going to be where it's going to be. Now you might be thinking, well, isn't that going to heat soak like crazy? You got a really good air gap between the manifold and that, and we'll put some heat shielding under it, or some reflective tape, or something. I'm not worried about it. This thing has a lot of fluid that goes through it, and it has an amazing recovery rate, like incredible recovery rate, because of how big it is. So I'm not entirely worried about that. So I'm thinking that's where we're gonna end up with that. Next thing I gotta sort out is what I'm gonna do with the coolant fill cap area. I was thinking I can have it just come up and be right here, but I wouldn't want to run it over the throttle body to get it back down to the radiator. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is just get another piece of aluminum pipe and a straight piece of tube that's the right size for that, and run it down to the radiator, and then run a neck like up. It will look a little funky at first. Up with the pressure overflow cap, and I can weld a bung to it and put it there. So it's like right here. And that'll also give me an area to attach the pressure sensor that's easily accessible without covering a whole lot of the turbo. So I think that's gonna solve that problem. It'll also get rid of this cast piece. Like this right here doesn't go to anything. We kind of have it just like capped off. So that'll get rid of that. And the weld-on bungs are pretty cheap, so it's not like it's going to be expensive to do that. So that is going to be the solution to that problem. All right, so got the intercooler piping pretty much all made up. Unfortunately, doing a reducer here, just because these sloped reducers cost a fortune. And I had, one good one laying around. So we'll weld that onto there, which will do that. Do that weld there. And then that's where the intercooler is going to go. These will get rotated, and then I just got to make brackets for it, which is the easy part. So that figures that out, and we eliminated a lot of piping. So we eliminated that piece, this piece, and then a good like 4 inches that was on this piece as well. So eliminated a lot of piping, which is great. So we know where the intercooler is going now, which means we just had to figure out our radiator fill neck. All right, got the intercooler piping all welded up and put on. Not clamping anything down because this is just temporary, so I can do the wiring. So that's good. Last bit of welding I need to do on engine stuff is to weld a bung onto here, but I don't have one, so that's gonna have to wait. But now we can start sorting out where everything's gonna go. And I've been putting some thought into the fuel system. I'm not a fan of it running all the way out and around, specifically because if a line bursts or something like that, it's gonna cause a fire. Fuel's gonna go all over the hot turbo stuff, and we don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is actually mount the fuel pressure regulator over here, and then weld a bung onto this side of the fuel rail, and just cap this off, just so that all the fuel is as far away from everything as we can get it. Obviously, there's no getting around the fact that the turbo manifold is back there and the fuel lines have to kind of run that way. So that is kind of what it is. But if we can prevent that, that'd be nice. So I got to get a bung for that too. This is steel, so I got to get a mild steel bung. It's going to be -8 to the fuel pressure regulator. So we got a plan in store for that. The vacuum manifold is going to go about right here. We have port for the fuel tech. We have a port for the blow-off valve. We have a port for the fuel pressure regulator, and then a big port for the brake booster. And then that is the feed line. And what we'll do is it's going to be steel braided, so we'll actually run it up and through here, and then I'll put a 90-degree fitting on that, and it will shorten up the routing. It'll be nice and big, -8, maybe even -10. Gotta see what I have for fittings. So that will solve that problem. And then the intercooler I was gonna mount to the engine, but because I'm still gonna be using couplers, I'd rather actually mount it to the chassis so it moves around less. So this bracket is gonna go from here down to the brake master bolt there. And then on this side, I will run this to back here. And then the front will get supported by all this stuff. I mean, right now, it's just sitting on the 2x4s, but the front is held up by just the couplers and not even clamped on. So we have that sorted out as well. I've got to get my hands on a turbo speed sensor. We're kind of getting to that point where we need to know what that is doing. So I've got to get that. So that's on a list of things I need to acquire and wire for. We got the up pipe on, obviously, with our O2 sensor. So before any of that wiring can happen in there, we have to deal with the interior. So this is all the stuff out of the other car that needs to make its way in here. So what needs to happen now is rack needs to come out, the steering wheel needs to come out, the HVAC console needs to come out, and then I have a decision to make about running a dash or not running a dash. Now, I would like to do race week, or a race week in this, but you have to have like a full interior to be in like the street modified class or something. I wouldn't be going to race week to win. I'd be going just to go. So I'm thinking not running a dash. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And the reason I'm thinking about not running a dash is just having to work around a dash and get everything to work with a dash is just kind of a pain in the butt. And this is just a toy, and this is going to be for testing. So stuff's got to come in and out. I've got a cool dash setup that I'm going to run in it that I sorted out a couple months ago that now I'm ready to implement. So I'm thinking I'm not going to run a dash, but I'm still going to take out the big dash bar and cut off all the tabs and stuff that I don't need so that it's just the bar going across with the stuff to mount the steering wheel, and then that's it. I don't think I'm going to leave all the other crap in there, so I don't need it. As far as mounting certain things, I have the entire center that I can use to mount. I can put a plate on it. I've got options. So I'm going to rip everything out of here, cut some of the weight down, and then kind of go from there. All right, so it's all loose. I've never taken one of these out with a roll cage in the way. So trying to figure that out. Don't have a whole lot of room to work with. The plates on the end are just huge. So you would think you can just lift one side up and then drop the other, but it won't twist like that because the cage is in the way. So I'm gonna have to play with this a little. Good news is, that's right, come out. Got a good old-fashioned catch-22 here. In order to twist this enough to get it out, that needs to come out of the way. But in order to get that out, this has to come out. Okay. I think what we're gonna have to do is cut this in half, the center point, and then I will make a sleeve that fits over. I can slide over with, I'll have to weld it back together once I get it in the car, because I'm gonna cut a majority of this off. So it'll be able to just slide back into the car. So I'm thinking that's what's gonna have to happen. We're gonna have to cut this sucker in half to get it out. Well, that was fun. Starting to understand how you fit the GTR engine in there, aren't you? Lots of empty space. Lots of it. Nice transmission tunnel. Anyway, that's out. Whew. So the next step would be, that can just stay there for now. So the next step is going to be trimming all the fat. So we need to cut up all the brackets and smooth things out and simplify. So I guess we'll do it one half at a time. Bring it back here. Clamp it down and get to grinding. As you just saw, I trimmed a lot of fat, as in the entire bar. Instead of spending hours and hours cutting off tabs, I'm just going to make my own crossbar. I have roll cage tubing, DOM tubing. Unfortunately, it's only 4 feet, and this is 53 inches, or sorry, 51 inches. But that's okay, because I need a means of separating it in the middle to get this bar out. So what I have is, I'm gonna make a sleeve, which if we come back here. So we have our roll cage tubing, and then we have smaller, which perfectly fits inside, which will allow me to make a sleeve. So what I'm gonna do is cut this piece exactly in half, and then weld the pieces into the car with that in between, which will create, we'll make it straight mostly. I can also clamp on a piece of angle iron too to really hold it straight. And then I will put lock bolts to hold this in. Obviously not gonna use this entire thing. We'll cut out a section of it, probably 6 inches long. And that way we can just lock it in, and that'll make one continuous piece without having to weld it. And then if I have to take it out, it's easy to take out. Matt from the future here, editing this video. I, for some reason, was unable to retrieve the footage of me making the rest of the dash bar. So I ended up welding it in the middle, as you'll see in this following clip, and then I mounted the steering column, the modified steering column from the other car, which is super, super lightweight. We took most of the power steering stuff out of it, so it's really lightweight. So also you're gonna see that I used like stainless steel flat stock to triangulate the column. Not the best material to do it with, but I had some laying around, and it's really strong and it's not very springy, so it's gonna work fine. So it looks a little wonky, but it will look fine once things are like going. All right, in the words of some guy somewhere, that'll do. So I had to MIG weld it, just get everything lined up, but it's nice and sturdy. It's not going anywhere. I gotta remove this. I ended up just tacking it in position. This kind of gets in the way of getting in and out, so I might just bend it out of the way or something. But it's in, it's hooked up, it's both working. So now we can move on to bigger things. All right, so now we just got to figure out layout. Now we have this from the other car, which is our Fueltech Nano Pro and our FT550 Lite right here, which doesn't have a screen. Now I have a screen, which is this tablet right here. I already designed and 3D printed a little test mount for it. So now I just have to make the rest of the mount to mount that right there. And that's going to give me a dash. I'll probably off center it like that. And that'll give me a dash, which I made a whole video on setting that up. And then we're going to put our buttons up here. So, you know, starter, pump, all that stuff will be up here. I already have that clamped on there. And then that leaves our PDM and input expander. The input expander PDM, I think I'm going to put right here. I'm going to get a plate and mount that there. And then the PDM there. And then that will, you know, I can see everything. The wiring will be easy to do. And then that will be that. This has all the relays and everything I need in it, so I shouldn't need anything except for this. So that's good there. So we know our layout. Now we just have to, you know, make everything. As far as a plate for this, I would like to use aluminum, but attaching the aluminum to that would require the drilling and tapping that, or making brackets or something like that. And I want everything to be really easy and simple to remove, modify, change around. So like this being up here, if this becomes annoying having to reach up here to do everything, you know, this can be very easily moved. I am going to tighten that so it doesn't move. So that is where that's going to go. And that's going to be it for today's work. I will figure out a plate for the next day that I work on this thing. And I'll sit down and do the CAD for that. I might film that process so that you guys can see what goes into that. But yeah, loads and loads of progress today.